Hiring or promoting a senior executive in Vietnam is not just a business decision, it's a legal commitment. Executive labor contracts define how your company's most powerful people operate, make decisions, and are held accountable. But many foreign employers make the mistake of treating these contracts like standard employment agreements. Executives often hold dual roles, as employees under the labor code and as legal representatives or managers under the enterprise law. This creates overlapping rights and responsibilities that must be managed carefully. In Vietnam, an executive's labor contract is not just about salary and title, it is about defining authority, liability, and compliance. Executive employment in Vietnam is governed by the labor code, the enterprise law, and relevant decrees concerning management positions. The labor code regulates the employment relationship, salary, working conditions, and termination, while the enterprise law governs management powers and fiduciary duties. Executives such as general directors, CEOs, and chief representatives often serve as both labor employees and company officers. This duality requires precise drafting to separate labor obligations from corporate governance duties. Failing to define this separation can expose companies to financial and legal risk. The first step in drafting an executive labor contract is defining the individual's legal status. Is the executive a foreign national or a Vietnamese citizen? Are they employed under a local subsidiary or seconded from an overseas parent company? For foreign executives, a valid work permit or exemption is mandatory before signing the contract. The agreement should clearly define the scope of authority, decision-making powers, financial limits, and reporting hierarchy. This prevents misuse of authority and clarifies accountability. It should also address representation before government authorities and banks, ensuring the company retains proper control of its legal representative. Executive contracts in Vietnam must include all standard clauses required under the labor code, job title, salary, working hours, benefits, and termination conditions, but they also require additional protections. These include performance-based compensation, confidentiality and intellectual property clauses, liability limitations, and indemnification provisions. For multinational companies, stock options or profit sharing must be structured carefully to comply with foreign exchange and tax laws. The contract should also include a governing law clause confirming Vietnamese law applies, even if the executive reports to an overseas headquarters. Precision in drafting ensures clarity in both compliance and expectations. Executives typically receive complex compensation packages, base salary, housing allowance, performance bonuses, and sometimes equity-based incentives. Under Vietnamese law, all income paid in or outside Vietnam is subject to personal income tax, PIT, if the executive resides in Vietnam for 183 days or more within any 12-month period. The contract must specify gross or net salary and identify which party bears the tax. For foreign executives, employers should also clarify whether the executive participates in compulsory social insurance and under which exemptions, if applicable. LTS law helps clients design compensation structures that meet compliance requirements while remaining tax efficient and transparent. Executive terminations carry higher stakes. Because executives often represent the company legally, their removal requires both labor law compliance and corporate procedures, such as shareholder or board resolutions. Employers must follow proper notice periods, 45 days for indefinite contracts and 30 days for fixed-term agreements, and must formally update business registration records when an executive departs. Severance, compensation, and confidentiality obligations should be addressed explicitly in the contract. A well-drafted termination clause ensures that leadership changes do not expose the company to litigation or compliance breaches. For executives, access to confidential information, business strategies, and trade secrets is unavoidable. Employers should include strict confidentiality, non-compete, and non-solicitation clauses to protect company interests after termination. However, under Vietnamese law, these clauses must be reasonable in scope, duration, and geography. Non-compete restrictions are typically limited to a reasonable duration, usually between 6 and 24 months, and must be supported by fair compensation. Conflict of interest clauses are also essential to prevent executives from engaging in competing business activities while in office. LTS Law's legal experts ensure these provisions are enforceable and proportionate, balancing business protection with local legal limits. Many foreign investors assume their global executive contracts automatically work in Vietnam. This assumption leads to frequent compliance issues. Typical mistakes include English-only contracts, excessive notice periods, or clauses governed by foreign law, which Vietnamese courts will not recognize. Some companies also fail to obtain work permits before contract signing or neglect to terminate representation authority at the Department of Finance after the executive's departure. These oversights can result in significant legal exposure, including unauthorized company actions or personal liability for directors. A European manufacturing group once replaced its country director in Vietnam without a formal termination agreement. The executive remained registered as the company's legal representative for months, signing documents and contracts. When LTS Law was engaged, we immediately structured a mutual termination agreement, prepared board resolutions, and updated all registrations within days. The company regained full control and avoided a potential multi-million-dollar dispute. The lesson: executive exits must be managed with both legal and procedural precision. LTS Law provides comprehensive legal services for drafting, reviewing, and managing executive labor contracts in Vietnam. Our lawyers ensure every clause, from authority and compensation to termination and post-employment obligations, complies with both labor and corporate law. We also coordinate with corporate secretarial and immigration teams to align HR, legal, and regulatory compliance seamlessly. Whether hiring a new country manager or restructuring leadership, LTS Law ensures your company's executives operate within a legally sound and risk-free framework. Executives drive business strategy, but only a well-drafted contract protects the company's foundation. In Vietnam, executive labor contracts must balance global standards with local legal requirements. If your company is hiring or replacing a senior manager, do not rely on generic templates. Contact LTS Law today to draft or review your executive labor contract. We ensure compliance, clarity, and confidence, so your leaders can focus on growth while your company stays legally protected.